Friends, before we start, I have to just say a huge thank you and a hell yes. This is episode 50, something that started as a really tiny dream of Christina and I running away to Sanibel Island. We're on episode 50. So let's do this. It's your birthday. Yesterday was too, and so is tomorrow. Not sure what that means? Let us introduce you to this powerful concept and our community. We're Helene and Christina, and our mission is to empower, teach, and remind women to celebrate themselves. Combined, we have over 35 years as therapists in private practice. It was in the office, as well as in our personal relationships, that we were hearing women struggling and not feeling seen or alive during what we call the messy middle life stage. We come to you not as your therapist, but rather we're two women in this life stage right there with you. We're your friends. Our podcast promises to talk about the hard or uncomfortable topics in a way to empower you. We're going to laugh along the way, and we're certainly going to look for joy in life. Christina's word of the year. What sets us apart? Why listen to us? We leave you with gifts with each and every episode. These may come in the form of actionable tools or tips, strategies, or invitations to say exactly where you are.
Now is the time to make our friendship official. We would love to help start your Thursday mornings with our podcast. So join our newsletter and follow our show wherever you listen. Find us at yourbirthdaypodcast.com to receive this episode in your inbox and all of our others weekly.
Friends, we are so glad that you are here today. Today, we're talking about something that truly is a gift, not from someone else, not something that you can buy, but something that comes from within, the gift of validating yourself. Now, I know that can sound a bit vague. Stay with us, friends. This is one of the most empowering habits that you can develop, especially if you're on a journey to build real, unshakable confidence. It's been sprinkled in past episodes, but today it's getting its own. So grab your beverage of choice, get comfy, turn up the volume, and let's dive into this huge, empowering gift for you. So excited. Like, usually you're the one who's like, I'm so excited for this one. But today I'm just beaming. It's episode 50. Cannot believe you fucking got
I
here.
love it. You're like a hell yeah. And
Just
self-validation.
don't knock me.
Self-validation for me was an oomph. Like it took, I don't think I could start self-validating till 40s. So this one is like, oh, like
Well,
this is my therapeutic journey work right here, this episode. So I love it.
yeah,
And here's what it is. It's a validation of how far I've come.
I love
That
that.
we get
Yeah.
to teach this topic now, which is really cool. So I love that it's a hell yeah for you because I think, like, I really believe in knowing our friendship that you caught on to self-validation pretty early on. And
No.
I was like a slow girl.
So
No?
that is so interesting. I'm fired up
Yeah,
because
like, since I've known you, you've been really good at being like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and I'm good.
now I gotta take a breath. So my sprinkle of like huge joy about this is because I really want people to have an It's Your Birthday life. I love our mission and I love that story. And I think to self-validate is why it's a hell yes. The interesting thing when I hear you say that is that I too struggled with like self-validating. Although I think I from very early on in life, like knew who I was. I don't know if I gave it the spotlight or the voice until I almost lost my voice and my life with cancer. And I think when you have a traumatic situation, and whether that's health issue, a relationship breakdown, something that happened to you that you didn't expect to happen to you, it can be the greatest invitation to be like, I'm still here and let's go. So what a gift you just gave me in seeing a part of me that I don't think I saw.
That's so
or would
funny.
have seen prior to like 9 years ago. So thank you for that. And I know how you said that you see you. I don't see that in you either. But if that's where you are, and I love that you see it, I love it rising on the thermometer of like an oomph to a hell yeah. And I can't wait to keep meeting the more and more versions of Christina and in our experience together. So yes.
So cool. I think we have to back up.
Okay, back up.
I think we need to talk to our audience about what is self-validation because when I talk
Mm.
about this with clients, like women shut off. Like you want to talk about discomfort? Like we could literally talk about vaginas, pregnancy, delivery all day long, and
Yep.
they can get super real with me. You want to talk self-validation and they want to run out of the room because what they hear is you're asking me to be arrogant, you're asking me to be a narcissist, you're
Oh,
asking me to be a bragger,
mm,
and they don't want to participate in it, right?
right.
Or they have an image of somebody in their head who's like a royal asshole, right?
Yeah.
Or like pretentious. Like that's what women think of. And I'm here to call bullshit on that because that's a bunch of shit that we have been told for hundreds of years that we are not to be validated. We don't have worth. We aren't, ugh,
So
ugh,
So
makes me
me, if
angry.
you've been, I'm gonna get Christina's having a contraction. I'm like,
I know. It
I'm gonna
just
let her
pisses
breathe.
me off.
I'm gonna let her breathe. And if you've been hanging out with us, I'm the visual person. So when I hear you say that, and what often I visualize is like people turtling in, especially women turtling in. So there comes our guardedness. There comes
Mhm.
our covering of a
Self-protection.
shell, like a turtle. And yet the beautiful part, which is also difficult, is that if someone is hurtling in and making themselves small because they're struggling with either what society, their family, fuck, social media tells them not to do with self-validating, if they have that internal voice that they're abandoning who they are, I love that for you, friend. So if you're making yourself small when you want to self-validate, but you get that feeling inside, Christina and I are giving you the baton to make it a hell yes. But when I think about what that could look like, so years ago, someone had either gifted me or invited me to go to the Rise conference. And if you're familiar with like David and Rachel Hollis, they have these women empowering conferences, and Trent Shelton was on there, who, Trent, if you're listening, like your energy took over the room. But one thing that they had us do at one point is they had us do a Wonder Woman pose, right? Like you just stand in your truth, head up high, shoulders back, which is so uncomfortable for a lot of people. And it was really just validating, like, I deserve to take space in this room. That
Yeah.
self validating is that you don't need or ask outwardly for someone to say you exist, for someone to say you matter, for someone to say, how you feel makes sense. It comes
Mhm.
from within. So that might look like you saying to
Yeah.
yourself, what I think is valid. I don't need anyone else to give it a hell yeah when it's a
Right.
fuck yeah to me. So it's going inward and really honoring it. And what you said was really so important. So if you do that, or if you hesitate to do that because that fear that someone might think I'm arrogant and I'm too big for my britches, that I'm a bitch, it's passing away that baton or just dropping that judgment and really honoring who you are. Because when you say something with confidence, it's not
Mhm.
aggressive.
Right.
When you say something with confidence, it's not hurting the other person. It's truly just standing in that Wonder Woman space that I matter and I could take up space in this world. And when you validate yourself, you are okay with it.
Yeah. It's accepting your own thoughts, feelings, experiences, and not needing anybody's approval to be you. You
Mhm.
know, I vividly remember my mom. She quilted this beautiful coat, and it's all full of colors, and she would like talk about it being her coat of many colors, similar to the Dolly Parton song and everything. And I remember at one point, like it was kind of a popular style and then it faded really quick. And I remember her like being like, well, it really isn't in style. And then I remember her saying, you know what? I love this coat and I worked damn hard on it and I made it from scratch and I quilted the entire thing. And I'm going to wear my coat whenever I want. And it wasn't in style, but without fail, no matter any time she wore it, people were like, your coat is gorgeous because it is and was. I still have it. And I loved that for her. I love that for her because she was not good at self validating. And I think if you have somebody in your life, maybe who was a role model or a maternal figure, and they weren't good at self validating, a lot of times we follow what we learn, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I was taught you don't validate yourself, you validate God, you validate Jesus. Like, you are nothing, God is here. And I think you can still honor your higher power. Like, I don't think self validation is not honoring your higher power. I think it's being confident in who you are. And if you believe a higher power made you, it's being confident in what your higher power made.
And I love what you just said. When you self validate, it's not taking away from something else or someone else.
Right.
You don't have to choose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It can be
Yeah.
an and, not an or a giving both, not a giving two.
Right.
You validating yourself isn't taking away the limelight or the validation of someone else. You don't have to
Right.
choose.
And it's not putting yourself on some pedestal and thinking that you're so much better than others or not listening to others or ignoring feedback. It's about really honoring and liking who you are. And this goes back to, our wrapping paper episode in season 1 where we talk about like who do you want to be? Who do you want people to think of when they think of you? Like what are the characteristics you want? And then validating that you have those. Validating the goodness in you and seeing the goodness in you. As
Right.
we're recording this, we are actually doing our 30 days of a more confident you, which is really cool. And one of those things was, what are 3 successes you've had this year? And I think being able to look and go, you know what? I did a fucking good job at that. You know what? I belong in this room. And you hear me all the time say, I belong at this table. You belong at this table. Any table that you want to be at, you belong at. You have a choice to be there or not, but that choice is yours.
And I think the gift of validating yourself is simply, right, when you say we have to tell people what it is that if you have that oomph, it's acknowledging it. Like,
Hmm.
even if the oomph is a hard thing, like when we started this episode and you were like, whoa, this is a hard one for me because this is a
Yeah.
growing space and I'm getting better at it, but I haven't fully reached where I want to be. That's validating. That's saying, I acknowledge, and you did it publicly. I acknowledge this is a hard episode. I'm improving at it. And I look forward to meet that future version of Christina who's more like a hell freaking yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just validating it without shaming it. Like you should be there already. Why aren't you there already? Why hasn't this
Mm.
happened? It's not questioning or judging it. It's simply allowing yourself to really honor where
Yeah.
you're feeling and what you're thinking and where you're at.
100%. And I think, as I said in the intro, we are so socially conditioned
Mhm.
to judge ourselves, critique ourselves, evaluate ourselves, question if something we said was wrong, question if something we did was wrong, question if we hurt somebody. Like, we are expected to, society says, care for everybody and put ourselves last. And here's what I will say, sometimes in a season, we need to do that. But even putting yourself last, it doesn't mean that you don't self validate or self care.
or self-notice.
Yeah, that's just it. And I think we need to move past this fear of judgment or rejection. Ladies, we are not in middle school anymore. So if people want to say shit behind our backs or say shit about us, let them. Who fucking cares? You know, it's the cardinal rules of life. What other people say behind your back is none of your business.
Right. Thank you, Oprah Winfrey. And I think sometimes just being aware, if you hear that's happening, and Christina does a beautiful job of reminding us throughout the different episodes, that most of the time has nothing to do with you.
Absolutely.
We are all mirrors in life. And when someone sees a part of themselves that maybe they haven't grown into or have the ability to
Mm-hmm.
successfully embrace within their life, and they see you doing it, we reject that part of you because it
Mm-hmm.
invalidates where they're not yet. So it's just being mindful that if someone is doing that, it has nothing to do with you. See, I'm the one who got us off track now. We're like totally
I love
reversing
it.
it,
No, I
right?
love it. And I think too, like one of the biggest things that I see all humans struggle with that are super successful is the perfectionism and never feeling like they are enough. And, you know, I look back, like when I reflect in my life, I look back at like middle school Christina, high school Christina, college Christina, grad school Christina, you know, even first couple of years Christina. And I remember thinking like, always thinking I was way behind the eight ball. Like everybody was so much further ahead in career, in life, in marriage, in success, in finances, like all of this, right?
Mhm.
And then it like dawned on me.
Mhm.
I think it was like late 30s, early 40s. Like, wow, look at what all you have accomplished in a short period of life.
Mhm.
And I kind of like had to take a step back and go, you constantly believed you were behind the eight ball when you were always way ahead of it and didn't realize that. And so I really had to just sit back and go, wow, you've done a good job. You really have. I think too, if you're a parent, there's so much fear and pressure of screwing your kids up. And I think if you're a single parent, that's compounded times 10. And if you are an only parent, that's compounded by 100. And I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who is an only parent. Her co parent passed away about a year ago.
Mhm.
And I just felt this intense pressure to be the best mom she possibly could. And I
Mhm.
said to her, I said, I wish you could step out of yourself and see yourself
Right.
in action. And also model for your child that you don't have to be perfect because your child's not going to be perfect. And they need to understand that perfectionism is not the goal. And so learning how to self-validate is an intense gift to yourself, but it's also a gift to those all around you that you're modeling life for.
Back to something you said. If part of the signs, like if there's things that you're recognizing that you're not validating yourself, right? Like maybe you're second guessing yourself, maybe you're needing a lot of reassurance, maybe the perfectionism is creeping in.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking a moment to say, is the voice of perfectionism coming from me?
Yeah.
If it's not coming from maybe you're chasing to still get the approval of your parents, even though you're an adult or a boss that maybe just has the highest standards. If it's coming from you have the power to change that, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it's unfamiliar to not live in the world of perfectionism. But if you take that moment, like Christina says, like just take a moment of that breath and you explore if that voice of perfectionism or those standards come from you can gift yourself another set of standards
Yeah.
because that's going to keep blocking yourself from validating yourself because it's almost like I think of the game. like kick the can. Like, so I grew up in like Long Island, and I remember like
Mhm.
getting together with my cousins sometimes, and they lived on a really cool street, and we would play kick the can. And the further you kick it, the harder you got to go, right, in order to get it. But if you keep kicking your can when you made the mark where you're supposed to be, you're constantly never going to validate yourself because you keep pushing it further. But if you allow
Right.
yourself to do that great thing that Christina did for herself, go inward and allow herself to get in connection of what she already had done, that brings
Mhm.
a celebratory and validating space.
Yeah, that's huge. Oh, I love that. You know, kind of the first moment in life that I remember like struggling with self-validation is I had a Spanish teacher in high school who I was like, let me back up. I was this really good student. Okay. I always did my homework turn on time. I studied my ass off. And I just was a good girl. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I was.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I get to high school. I think it was probably like junior year of high school. My Spanish teacher was so critical of me.
Mhm.
And I remember her saying to me, like, you're never going to be fluent in Spanish. And I was like, wow,
Mm. Ugh.
right?
Yeah.
And then she kept like thinking that I was cheating on my essays and that I was getting help from another teacher and like always doubting me. And I am a rule follower. So I can promise you I didn't cheat. Like, that's
Right.
not who I am.
Sure.
But I just remember being so frustrated at the constant critique. And I went to my guidance counselor, Mrs. Steggy, and
Mhm.
I remember her saying to me, do you think everyone in this world is going to like you?
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I can try. And she
Yeah.
goes, that's unrealistic. And I was like, why? And then she said to me, she goes, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. You need to know for yourself that you've done your best job.
Say that
You need
again.
you need to know for yourself that you have done your best job. You need to know for yourself that you worked your hardest. If you can say yes to both of those, then who cares what the Spanish teacher thinks? Who cares?
Right. Because you had to be okay with you when you lay
Yeah.
your head down on your pillow. I tell people.
Right. And that stood out to me. Ironic thing is, like many years later, that Spanish teacher asked me if I would come back and speak to the class as to how I was using my Spanish because I was working at a Spanish speaking clinic. And I was like, no, because I had enough self validation to be
Right.
like, I'm not supporting you. You are not a nice human. I wasn't rude or disrespectful about it, but I was just like,
Of course not. And I might not go
oh,
back into a space with someone who was highly critical, not affirming, not supportive, didn't try to rise me up, try to bring me down. And I may not want to allow myself to go back into that space. I have nothing to prove. I'm good. And that's
exactly.
me validating. And I
Yeah.
think there could be so many powers and gifts of when you validate. And when I think about, I always say, like, I get pretty good at that, of like advocating for myself. I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten really good at advocating myself, especially when you go
Mhm.
through like a health trauma. You're like, you have to use your voice. But when I
Mhm.
roll back life as you're talking, I think about a time where I always say it's like so bold of me, right? It never would have been me back then. But I guess it was because when I keep saying that language, I can't believe I did that. That so wasn't me. And yet I did it. I keep invalidating. So I was going to go to law school, decided to go to graduate school instead after meeting with the dean at University of Florida for the law school. And she was like, you don't want to be an attorney and you want to go to grad school instead. And what you want to do is work with people. And I was like, oof, okay. Like my written out plan in permanent ink now had to go to erasable pen because I was making a big left turn. So I applied to a bunch of graduate schools, but one school that I really wanted to go to, it was ranked really well in the country at the time. I didn't hear anything, and I just kept calling and calling. And the woman who was like part of the admissions committee, like her and I became friends because I just kept calling. I'm like, hi, it's me again. Like, is there a decision? Which was so, I would say not me, but I guess it was. P.S.
You
Long story
wanted it.
short,
You knew you deserved it.
I know. And I said, look, like my GRE score, not great. My GPA, amazing. My essay, I'm a really good writer. Like,
Mhm.
tell them to please look at the holistic package, not just that one thing. And I will drive up there so they can meet me and not just be based on that number. She goes, okay, I'll tell them. Right. I was like nagging and advocating. And finally, I had to make a decision, right? Some of the other schools were like, you have to put down money. And I called again and I said, hi, it's me. And I was making long distance phone calls from work, which, I didn't really have the money to do. There was no
Right.
cell phones at the time, all the things. And I said, can you please tell me, like, where am I at? Like, what to do? And I remember she said, don't change your address to any other location other than this town in Florida. Don't buy any new letterhead. Like, so she was telling me I got it without telling me. And
Right.
if I didn't validate myself that I felt like I deserved a seat at that table, I wouldn't have kept going. So I want you to be able to take those stories from Christina and I. The power of validating is that you choose where you want to be. You advocate for it. Get that fire, that little voice within you, and blow on it and make it bigger and let it be your trailblazer. You create your own safe space like Christina did, and you also have influence on the trajectory of your life when you validate
Yeah.
and truly believe in yourself.
100%. And I think when we dismiss or downplay ourselves, we are closing doors on ourselves that should be opened, and we chip away at our own confidence. So I absolutely, that story just makes my heart so happy. Like, you belonged at that grad school. You knew where you were supposed to be. They were just slow at getting you there. But
That
yeah, I
goosebumps.
love that. I
Mm,
love that.
mm. And I
Um,
guess doing this, I think as you're listening to our episodes, I hope at times when you hear something and you're like, wait a minute. When I was younger, I knew my wrapping paper. Maybe I don't know it now. Or maybe when I was younger, I did validate myself. And I all along kept saying I didn't. Like, I hope we're getting you in touch with pieces of yourself that maybe you didn't see or acknowledge at that time, but now it could be a hell yeah. Thanks, Christina.
I know. And what we really want to challenge our listeners to is to stop always second guessing yourself.
Oh, so what can that look like? Can you help me out there?
I think of the woman that's like, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I'm smart enough. I go back to what I've said in other episodes, like women tend to under apply for jobs and men tend to over apply for jobs. Apply for the fucking job. Even if you don't feel that you have enough experience, you do. You do. You are meant to be there. You are meant to apply. You are meant to interview. What does it hurt to throw in an application? Like,
Right?
why? Why? What's the worst they can say? No?
Right.
Well,
Yeah, it's just an invitation. Let them know you exist. That's all applying is, I tell people.
right. Or they're constantly needing reassurance or validation from others. I remember in college, I was on a mission trip and a guy said to me, why are you always asking others' opinions? And I was like so offended at the time. I was like, fuck you. And then I sat with it and I realized like I was doing a lot of that because I was really uncomfortable on this trip and feeling like I didn't fit in. And it was like exactly what he was snarky. And this is what we talk about is like, it doesn't mean that you don't take feedback. But I sat with myself and I was like, I belong on this trip just the same as everybody else. I have every reason to be here. I'm doing a great work. We were tearing down and rebuilding houses through Habitat for Humanity, and it was really incredible. And it just turned me around. And then I remember the next day, like interacting with some just really incredible humans and listening to their story and spending time with their kids. And afterwards, one of them said, can I just give you a hug? Because you have no idea the gift you gave me by just listening to me. And that was actually one of the moments where I was like, I think I want to be a psychologist. Like I
Wow.
can't.
So what he said, you reframed it.
Mhm.
You threw it in the colander, you sifted what didn't serve you, you kept what you needed, you connected
Mhm.
with others, and then it helped you with the trajectory of your career space.
Yeah. I think another one is I think of the story of you at the store with your grandmother and your grandmother pulling you aside and said, you don't get to dismiss people's compliments. Like a sign that you're not validating yourself is minimizing your accomplishments and refusing or dismissing or being awkward when others give you compliments. Like,
Uh-huh. No,
friends,
I didn't know to put it that way. Yes.
you are amazing humans. Like, you are amazing. And when people point it out to you, when people tell it to you, accept that, appreciate that, realize it, or making yourself unseen in relationships or family get togethers or events, like putting yourself in the background all the time. My sister in law is very good at that, Julie. She puts herself in the background, and I'm always like, Julie,
Mhm.
get yourself out there. Like, you are smart, you are capable, you are amazing. Like, I, as everybody knows, like, really, really believe in Julie. And Julie has done incredible work on self validation. But this is it. Like, you deserve to be equal in any relationship. Any relationship.
Right. And I think if you are in a place of that, you're struggling to start validating yourself, and yet you might have a place in your life that you've been giving gifts of being validated by others, right? So, like, if you work in a place that maybe like in a hospital, and if people or parents or family members can write a thank you note, or maybe if you're in the educational space and they've done that, like get out some of those accolades and put them on a little sticky note and fill up your mirror just so you
Mhm.
can expose yourself to what people have told yourself. And then it's like saying, if all of those people over the last, whatever, decade of my career said those things to me, expose yourself to them and then start picturing you saying that to yourself and being like,
Right.
I did good work to
Mhm.
receive that. I showed up with compassion and kindness. I know my skills. And I
Yeah.
don't need other people to tell me it feels good, but dang it, I know it. I know my shit.
Yeah.
I've earned that position or things like that. But, yeah.
Another thing that I hear patients saying all the time is, I shouldn't feel this way, or
Mm.
other
Ugh.
people have it worse than me, or my life really isn't that bad, or, I'm overreacting.
The
And
minimizing, the dismissing,
yeah. And
the
I look at them like, this is going to sound crass, but I'm here to call bullshit. And I say it just like that. I am here to call bullshit on those statements.
right,
Let's process what makes you say that statement. Why
right. What's
shouldn't you
underneath
feel this
that?
way? Like,
Yes.
yeah, and just dig deep and then, realizing you have a right to your feelings. You have a right to your beliefs, no matter what they are.
Say that again. That everyone in the back of the audience needs to hear that one.
You have a right to your feelings. You have a right to your beliefs, no matter what they are. And I say that, and I even say that to people that are sitting on the opposite side of religion, politics, whatever. Like, you have a right to those.
Right.
Now, you don't have a right to put those on other people,
Right. That's boundary violation.
right? But you have a right to have those for yourself. And that is my challenge, is that whatever your belief system is, whatever your feelings are, they are valid, they are yours, and then you have a choice what to do with them. And Helene and I are challenging you to not suppress, not to throw them out, not to ignore them. Listen to them and say, you know what? It's okay that I feel hurt. It's okay that I feel sad. It's okay that I feel overwhelmed. It's okay that I feel joy and someone else doesn't. It's okay that I'm happy even if X isn't. I was just talking with a patient of mine who is in a stage of grief, and several of their friends are too over a loss. And my patient said, I feel weird because I feel joyful. And I said, okay, tell me more. And
Mhm.
they said, well, my friends are weeping and they're sad. And this friend had stage 4 cancer that they had been struggling with for about 7 years of suffering. And she said, I feel joyful that my friend no longer is in pain. And she said, but I don't feel like I can share that with my friends. And I said, why don't you feel that your feeling is valid? And she said, I think I'm going to hurt others by it or people won't understand. And I said, what if they're all feeling the same way you are? I said, or why isn't your feeling just as important as their feelings?
Absolutely.
And so we kind of talked through that. And, she was one of the people that was like closest. So honestly, saw some of the most suffering. And so, we talked about how her feelings are just as valid as everybody else's.
And I think when you validate yourself, like one great thing that you've been telling people is being really mindful of a couple of things that come to mind. One, don't play the comparison game,
Mm-hmm.
because when you do that, you can get caught up on deflating or dismissing how you feel.
Right.
And the other thing that I think you're gifting people when you're going to start validating yourself is that if you notice there's some background noise, perhaps there was some messaging that you heard when you were younger, like your feelings are too big or you're too much. Perhaps they couldn't handle it or they didn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not mean that you have to muzzle or not acknowledge your feelings. So just because someone in your past didn't validate or hold space or be able to experience what you were feeling or where you were at, they may have stopped you because of their own discomfort. And here's the thing, if you're getting comfortable with how you feel, don't do that same behavior. Like Christina talked about earlier, that modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Get comfortable with how you feel with
Yeah.
yourself and
Yeah.
give it the space that it has so deserved, probably for so long.
I think I love when people can learn to love themselves and genuinely appreciate who they are. I always say kind of the most attractive quality in a friendship, in a relationship, even in a business relationship, is a confident human. And a confident human is somebody who knows what they bring to the table, knows what they value, and also knows what isn't their strengths, what
Mhm.
is their weaknesses, and finds people on their team to kind of fill those gaps of where they don't do well. Because we're not perfect. We're not going to be able to do everything.
Right?
And so, when we can really give ourselves self validation, we're consistent, we don't have shame over it, we can be gentle with ourselves, we can understand life ebbs and flows, then, what I see in my patients is like life shifts for them
Mhm.
from feeling burdened, weighed down, kind of like an Ebenezer Scrooge with shackles on, to feeling joyful and hopeful and lighter. Emotional regulation. They're less judgmental of others because they're less judgmental of themselves.
Absolutely. And it's very empowering. They've created the shift. And again, when you're talking about what you see in people, they've created it. They didn't wait for someone else to give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
They did it for themselves.
The self confidence rises. They no longer need permission from others to do X, Y, or Z. They just go out there and fucking do it themselves, which is awesome.
So
Love
awesome.
that. And when life gets tough, they literally become their own safe space, right? Like they know how to care for themselves, they know what to do, and they do it.
They trust it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think it literally took me 39 years to work through this self validation. So at 40, when we moved to Minnesota, my self validation took a huge fucking hit of just adjusting to life here and all the changes that came with our family in being here.
Mhm.
And it forced me to really work on this self validation. And I think if I didn't believe in myself, I would have not launched 3 businesses in 3 years. Like, I wouldn't have believed I could do it. But I launched a psychology practice in Minnesota. Then I launched the co working space. And then the following year, we launched It's Your Birthday. And I think, too, if I hadn't believed in myself, I wouldn't have felt comfortable in coming into this business relationship with you because I would have been afraid to use my voice. And I know it would have been a toxic dynamic. And you and I are both really good at using our voices and saying, hey, this is what I want. This is what I don't want. This is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I'm not. Because we have self validation and we sit with ourselves and know we know our strengths and we know our
Yeah.
weaknesses.
And we're accepting.
Yeah.
Even if I think there's something I can bring up and you may not be accepting or see it, I'm not going to muzzle it. And same thing with you. So that's the piece also. That's
And
the triple.
we're not going to dismiss each other either because we're confident enough in ourselves to listen to one another and hear it and process it and kind of solve it together.
Lots and lots and lots of gifts through this one. See, I started out like a hell yeah, super excited. And I think because it's one of the greatest gifts. I truly love like the episodes we've done. But the fact that this was number 50 and we
And that
never
was like divine intervention. We didn't plot this out, friends.
is like
It just
validating that,
happened.
like, yeah, like who would have thought?
So if you're
Yeah.
struggling with this, like Helene and I do here and there in seasons,
Yes.
and have for a big chunk of our lives, here's how you get started. First of all, acknowledge your feelings. Quit saying the I shouldn't feel this way or I'm not okay to feel this way or whatever. Whatever your feeling is, it's okay.
Yes.
Give yourself permission to feel it. And then acknowledge yourself without judgment. If you need to journal that, if you need to think about that, if you need to meditate over that, do it. But just acknowledge yourself without judgment, which is going to be probably the hardest part of this. Won't lie.
And you might even visualize, right, Christina, you're big about visualize the woman of you in front of you who does it without doing the judgment or criticism and getting connection with her, that future version of how you want to be.
Yeah. And then, one of the things that Helene and I say a lot is, would you talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself? And I think the key is talking to yourself just the same as you would talk to a friend, with the same kindness, empathy, care, concern. If you're a kind friend, you need to be kind to yourself too.
That's a non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. Like that is not optional. And then affirming yourself, validating, yeah, it's okay that I feel this way. I understand myself. I know myself. I'm comfortable with myself. I'm okay in my skin.
Write all those down, people. All those things, that little bullet point that Christina gave you 5, if you need some things to kind of mirror and practice and expose you to, write down those things. Those were huge gifts. And then see if you can start practicing it in your own language, in your own voice. Huge gift moment right there.
And I think if you can get through those, then we're going to push you to the higher level, which is noticing when you seek external validation the most, right? I mean, just yesterday, I had a difficult conversation with a parent and it was hard. And I walked out feeling like, am I not good at X, Y, or Z, right? And my go to reaction was to grab my phone and I texted a colleague that said, can I have a consult? It was really good because she was busy. And so she didn't text me back for a couple hours, which was fine.
Right.
But in that time, I validated myself. I processed through it and I was like, no, I did a really good job. I'm okay. And so when she texted me back and said, hey, I have time at this time, I said, you know what? I'm actually really good, but thank you. Because I was able to go triggered, but I trust me.
Oof. Right. Noticing it, take a moment, explore really what's going on. Because at first it could just be a big feeling. But then when you sit with it and you drop the judgment, You may notice things that maybe in that instant you hadn't noticed initially.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, self validation is hard. It isn't a one time thing, it's a continuum, it's a cosine graph, the up and down. Like some days you're great at it, some days you're not, as is with anything in life, friends.
Yes.
So, our challenge to you is what can you validate yourself with today?
And let us know. Drop on our social. Christina's going to tell you in a moment where to find us. We would love to hear about it and cheer you on.
Yeah, and find ways that you're proud of yourself. What have been your successes these years? Go back to our Instagram social. We have everything pinned that we've done for the days of May of all the ways to be confident. A lot of that is self validation. So go back and use those as your tools and give yourself permission to be proud of yourself. Give yourself permission to rest. Give yourself permission to have your feelings. All of it.
Big warm feeling at the end. Love it.
No. So, friends, we are here to wish you happy birthday. This episode is a gift to you and us, won't lie. Helene and I are so proud that you listened. You made time for yourself. And we legitimately cannot wait to learn how you've implemented this practice. So, literally, spam our inbox away because we really genuinely want to know. And so we would be grateful as always if you share this episode, leave us a positive review wherever you listen, and don't forget to join our mailing list at yourbirthdaypodcast.com. And in the meantime, hang out with us on social. You can find us on Insta, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We're there. And tune in on Mondays for our gifts from the couch. Until then, happy birthday, friends.